Hello and welcome. While I was rummaging around in my box of manuals, I came across the 740/760 manual. This one's again quite a nice cover on it. It's got a yellow theme going on. Quite nice. So today we'll go through the straight stitching section here. It talks a little bit about stitch length, selecting the straight stitch, tensions, lifting the presser foot higher than normal, edge guides, needle positioning, reverse stitching, which I've covered already, needle positioning, which I've also covered in the first basics video, straight stitching foot and throat plate there, and also temporary stitching, so speed basting and chain stitching. So let's get down to the machine and take a wee look. One of the first things they talk about is the presser foot and the plate. Just be careful when you're taking these plates off that you don't scrape the point of the needle. These are magnetically held on. This is your standard throat plate and your standard utility presser foot, and ideal for straight stitching, and pretty much most operations that you'll be using this throat plate, and a lot of the time you'll be using this press foot, and for straight stitching that's ideal. So first of all, it's a matter of selecting the straight stitch on the dial here, push in and select the straight stitch there, and also make sure the needle positioner is in the center, not to the right or to the left. Well, you can sew straight when it's set to the right or left, but for this demonstration at the moment we'll use the middle setting there, and also have your stitch width set to 0. I've got the stitch length set on about 3 and recommended thread tensions around 4. That's going to depend on your thread and types of fabric, things like that. So let's get this plate on. Handy tip, if you've got the plate off and you don't want to bother going and picking up the thread again, you can feed the bobbin thread through the underside, through the throat plate hole from below before you put the plate on, and that just saves you picking the bobbin thread up again. And then just place and try not to get the thread caught over the feed dog like I've got there. And there we have the bobbin thread ready to go there, and we'll clip the presser foot on. Just line up the shank with the presser foot there. I'll just get this machine quickly threaded up. Just a note on the threading there, that the little diagram in the manual is actually quite good. They suggest putting the thread over the top of the tensioner first of all, and then coming down on the right hand side and the left hand side, and then coming back under the thread guide on the right there, and also pull a long way down on the left hand side, and it'll clip under the little thread guide on the left there, and also on the right. And you can see there that the dotted line is where it's going in behind the discs there. So that's quite a nice little diagram, explains it quite well. So they're suggesting, first of all, to come down in between the discs, go under that guide to the right there and pull down on the left, and that's your top thread threaded through the top tensioner, nice and easily. Probably a little bit easier than the way I was showing it actually in the basics video. So quite good, sometimes little tips and tricks you can pick up from the manuals. Now as far as tension goes, the bobbin tension is set in the factory, so you shouldn't have to adjust the bobbin tension. There's one time when you do, and that's for an open zigzag, and I'll cover that later, not in this video but in another upcoming video. And let's just have a wee look. And I would say that is actually looking a little bit tight. If we have a look in the manual here, it's looking a little bit like this. That's too tight. Now I'm going to exaggerate that even more, and I'm going to put the tension up to 7. And there you can see it's very tight. Also the machine seems a bit noisier too, and I think that's because of the tight tension. I'll go to the other extreme, I'll go too loose, and this could cause a problem. There you can see we're getting all sorts of loopies. Those loops there, that's the top thread coming through. So that's a surefire sign of, you know, too lighter top tension, too loose. And that's shown here in the manual with little loopies underneath. So that's the bottom side and quite loose looking on the top. Sure indication that top thread's too loose. I'll put the tension back on about 3. I find that's pretty good for this machine. That's looking pretty good there. Not bad underneath. Could go a little tighter, maybe. It's probably easier to see if you have different coloured threads if you're trying to balance your tension. But different threads behave differently as well, so as soon as you change back to the colour that you want, it might change also. So be aware of that. But maybe I'll go up to 4. Yeah, that's looking better there. It's looking good. So about 4 is about right. And that's trial and error as well with your machine. All machines are different, and different fabrics and different threads and different types of needles and all sorts of things, you know, play into that tension scenario. So yeah, it's a matter of just getting a piece of fabric and, you know, of a similar type and thickness that you're going to be sewing, and just having a wee play really. Another handy tip with the presser foot, if you are having trouble getting fabric underneath the presser foot here, you can lift the lever at the back. So to lift the presser foot, obviously you push the lever up and it sits in this position here. That's just the normal height that the presser foot will latch into when it's raised. You can raise that even further just by pushing up on that lever. Will raise the presser foot further, and that allows you to lift the presser foot even higher than normal, just so that you can get the bulky sort of fabric under there, and then you can let your presser foot down and away you go. Now, as far as guides to help you keep your seams straight, you've got these lines on the throat plate here which line up with the numbers, and the numbers are the amount of millimeters between the needle in its straight position in the center of its positioning and the line. So number 4 is 4 millimeters between the needle and the line there. So you can use that to, you know, help you along the edge of a seam. There's also a line on the slide plate here, and that is 1.5 centimeters, which I think is around 5/8 of an inch. So you can also use that as well. And that you'll also notice 2 little lines here. They are 1.5 centimeters from where the needle pierces the fabric. So for doing consistent square corners at 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, that makes that quite easy. And I'll demonstrate that. So if we put the fabric on the 1.5 centimeter mark there, and we'll just, this is a bit rough because I'm not quite right behind the machine. I'm off to the side filming this, so I'll do my best to get that straight. And if you just sew until the front edge here lines up with one of the little lines here, that's pretty close, not quite. And make sure your needle is in the down position. Lift the presser foot, turn the fabric, and it should line up pretty closely to this 5/8 line here, 1.5 centimeter. Maybe go a little bit further there. We've actually gone past the line a little bit there, and we're lining up fairly close there. So that's quite a handy guide just for keeping your 1.5 centimeter seam allowance when doing a corner there. And if say you want to do a 4mm seam allowance, you would come into the 4 line there and just guide down there like so. And you can also attach the seam guide here as well. So you just screw that into the hole in the plate in the bed there, and then just adjust that to wherever you want the seam allowance to be. Tighten the mounting screw there, and that's quite a handy guide. Another handy thing is the window in the slide plate here. Gives you an indication of how full the bobbin is, so quite handy just to keep an eye on that to make sure that your bobbin doesn't run out in the middle of a seam. We also have the straight stitching plate here that we can use, and the straight stitching presser foot. And you know, this is used for delicate fabrics, and the reason for that is because with delicate fabrics and the wider throat plate and presser foot holes, the material can move up and down in the hole, and that can cause a problem where it stops the loop from forming properly, and you can end up with slip stitches, otherwise known as miss stitches, or skipping stitches. With the straight stitching plate, you've got this fine hole here, so the finer fabric is less likely to move up and down, and that's what's called flagging, when the fabric moves up and down in the hole. So let's get that on. Like that, and we can use the old trick again. Come up through the plate. Like that. Put the snap-on straight stitching foot on, and we're set to go. Now obviously you can't position the needle positioning to the left or to the right positions, because you can see there that that's going to come down and hit, because it's out of line, it's going to come down and hit the side of the presser foot there, like that. It's just not lining up. So middle position there. You can also use the zip foot for this as well, so you can sew just like normal there, or if you want to use the zip foot, you can just clip that on to whatever side you want to use. There we go, down the left side. Now we'll take a look at the speed basting. It says here this revolutionary new basting feature causes the needle to penetrate the fabric once every 12 forward movements of the fabric. Thus you will notice that the fabric will move a considerable distance between stitches. You should align the arrow with the post on the disc holder as illustrated by rotating the hand wheel before your first stitch. So it's talking about this here. It's rotating the pattern disc. It doesn't matter what disc you have in here. It's showing like a flexi stitch pattern or the buttonholer dial here. It doesn't really matter. What it's basically saying is to line up this post here or the dot on the buttonholer. It would pay to remove the needle thread for this, because you're going to be turning the machine over. Just remove the thread from the needle is probably enough. And so it's saying to line up this arrow with this dot here, or if you don't have any cams in, it's actually referring to the little driver down here. So you literally just turn the machine until that lines up with this arrow here, just like so. And if you've got the buttonhole attachment in, just line the red dot here up with this arrow. So with the speed basting stitch, your machine produces stitches of any length up to about 5 centimeters or 2 inches to suit the sewing you're doing and the weight of the fabric. Some of the many sewing jobs for which you'll find speed basting useful are joining seams for trial fittings, marking construction lines, basting hems and pleats, and embroidery. So quite versatile, and it shows you here what plate and press foot to use, what settings to have your machine on. So we put the standard throat plate on, the standard presser foot, we set the dial to basting, we set the needle position to the centre and the stitch width to the widest, number 5, and we drop the tension down to about 2. Stitch length depends, so every 12 stitches as such it's going to actually perform the stitch. 1 millimetre here, if you take that, multiply it by 12, I guess I would have thought you would have got 1.2 centimetres, but maybe there's a little bit of loss there. So it looks like it's 10 times approximately, or until you get to here. So the stitch length is going to play a role in how long the basting stitch is. Got a nice long piece of fabric here. There we have a basted seam, and you can see the massive stitch length. So that's about an inch, 2.5 centimetres stitch length. So very handy feature. Now, still on the subject of temporary stitching, we're going to do the chain stitching now, and you can do the chain stitching with either the zip foot or the straight stitching foot. So we'll use the straight stitching foot today. Change the plate. We put in the chain stitching plate here. It's got this little shaft here and a longer needle hole. This is a single thread chain stitch, and we drop in the little attachment there. The flat surface faces up, and this little part here, sort of squared off piece here, goes to the rear. So just drop that in. Just drop it in like so. Just like that. Straight presser foot on there. So the top thread needs to go through this little guide here for the chain stitching. And to do that, you just simply open the plate, face plate there. Now the thread's coming down from the take-up lever, down through the guides and threading through the needle. But what you have to do is you have to come in here and around the back of this little guide here, like that. Just give you a closer look at that. So it's really just a matter of coming around the left-hand side of that guide and in there, like that. And then just close the face plate there, and that's all set for chain stitching. Nice big piece of pillowcase here. It should be set to go. This stitch I actually use quite a bit. It's really good for temporary stitching, for just mocking something up, maybe trial fitting, things like that. And by rights you should be able to chain right off the end of the fabric. I'm not sure exactly why. Oh, that's too loose. That's better chaining off here now, and the tension looks a lot better there as well. So I've got the tension set to 5, and then you just trim like that, and that's the bottom side there. You can see the tension there was too loose, and on the top it just looks like a normal stitch. And if you want to unpick that, you probably have smaller scissors than I have, but you cut through the lower strands like that, flip the fabric over, and then you probably use an unpicker or something, but I'll just use tweezers. You get that strand there, and you should be able to just pull. That will unravel the seam. So then you can just undo the seam, and if you want to, have another go. Just if it's a trial and error type scenario, you can just re-sew the seam with the chain stitching, do a fitting. If it's still not right, then you can just unravel the thread, start again. Very handy. So that's about it for this video on straight stitching on the Singer 700 series. There's actually quite a bit more you can do with the straight stitching feature. The likes of binding, that's, you know, putting a binding over the edge of a piece of fabric, and you can do things like hemming and darning and embroidery. So quite a versatile function really. If all you had is a machine that did straight stitch, you know, you could still achieve quite a lot. So, you know, a lot of the older machines only had straight stitch, so, you know, that's all you could do with them. And in fact, I had a wee thought whilst I was doing this video that I've got another 760 that's broken. It's got a broken cam stack, you know, and I was wondering if you could still use the machine if it's got a broken cam stack, and I think it could be usable. So keep an eye out for the video where I convert a machine that's got a broken cam stack for use with just the straight sewing features. And I hope you found that video helpful. If you like these videos, might I recommend other videos on the Singer 700 series sewing machines. And as always, thank you very much for watching.